More than any other time in the past, we need to connect ourselves and children with nature and the environment. My name is Kevin O'Shea, and I'm an environmental educator who wants to connect all of you with a bit of inspiration. In each episode of the Nature Talks podcast, I'll talk to incredible educators, scientists, thinkers, and innovators who are connecting those around them to nature and the outdoors and inspiring new generations of environmental stewards. Well, hello there, everyone, and welcome to episode number 15 of the Nature Talks podcast, the environmental education podcast. This week, we've got another fantastic episode. We're going to be talking all about citizen science, conservation, through the lens of trail cameras. This is a really neat episode. I was really fortunate to have Wombat from Japantrailcam stop by the podcast and share with us the neat things he is doing in Japan with a series of trail cameras throughout the forests of Japan, researching, documenting wildlife, animals that live in Japan. And this is, I think, just a great model for anyone, no matter where you are in the world, if you're interested in learning about local wildlife, flora and fauna. Trail cameras are a fantastic thing to help you be a student of those different aspects of nature, and you're going to learn a lot more about those in a little bit. Now, this might sound a little different than normal. I'm not really sure, but that will have to do with the fact that I am recording this portion of the interview, or I should say of the podcast, at home. And normally I do use a recording studio at my local school, at the school I work at, but I am in China, and things can still be sometimes strange when you live in China. And I'm currently in the 6th day of house lockdown. That's right, that still happens here in China because of COVID-19. There were a couple of cases a few buildings away from me. So my family and I have been locked in our apartment. And yeah, there we go for the last 6 days. Hopefully we'll be free in a few days. That's a whole topic for a different type of podcast, my thoughts on this. But back to environmental education and all of the neat things that are around this really important topic. Now, I would like all of you guys to check out the Nature Talks podcast Facebook page. We're growing. I'd like to see it grow more and more. There's a lot of useful information there, a lot of links, a lot more information about this episode and every other episode of the podcast. The Nature Talks Facebook page is essentially where we have all of our show notes and lots of more information about the different people who come on the podcast, that topic, as well as other aspects of outdoor education, environmental education, climate action, and all of these important things that we really need to be focusing on today in 2022. All right, well, you know what? Let's jump on to the podcast, into the episode, and find out more about Japantrailcam. All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of the Nature Talks podcast. And this week, we've got a really fantastic episode, something that you probably weren't expecting, but something that has such an important, I feel, connection with nature, wildlife, learning about wildlife and learning about nature. And that's the whole thing about this podcast. We talk about if we can connect students and teachers and people with the natural world, they'll learn to love it and protect it. So this week, we're going to be talking to Wombat from Japantrailcam. Wombat, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Oh, and I'm really excited to have you here. I've been following what you have been doing on Japantrailcam for quite some time on Twitter, actually. I'm going to say at least, I want to say a couple of years, maybe a year and a half. And I also follow you on my Instagram, and I enjoy all the Instagram stuff, and on YouTube as well. I spent probably I'd say about 30 minutes watching footage of critters on YouTube a couple of nights ago while eating potato chips and drinking Diet Coke. But yeah, so I was wondering, just to start things off, if you could tell the listeners maybe just a little bit about yourself and the origins of Japantrailcam.
Sure. So I'm Wombat, and as you might have known by my name, Wombat is an Australian animal. I'm from Australia. But I came to Japan in 2010, I think. So I've been in Japan about 12 years now. And yeah, I've always been a bit of an outdoors person. So when I came to Japan, in the mountains most weekends, just hiking. But yeah, I became interested in the wildlife in the mountains, sometimes seeing deer and wild boar on my hikes. So it was about 3 years ago that I decided to get a trail camera and yeah, just stick it in my local mountain up behind my house. And yeah, I didn't get much on it, just a rabbit and I think a boar or something like that. But it was really interesting to me. And yeah, it just started from there. And then later, so I put a couple of videos on YouTube from my hiking channel. I had a YouTube hiking channel.
Okay.
And then I had a friend, I have a friend, American guy lives nearby me. And he saw those videos and he said, hey, I'd really like to get a trail cam too. So we kind of just started Japantrailcam, and now we have 10 or so cams all around Fukuoka. Yeah.
Nice. And I heard an interview with your partner in crime, so to speak, on he was featured on an episode of JJ Walsh's Seeking Sustainable Japan, I believe.
Right.
That is, I was on one of her early episodes. I want to say early, it was like 130. Now she's like over 400 episodes. She is just a tour de force when it comes to sustainability and podcasting. But yeah. So, trail cams. Here's a term that just we'll maybe touch on for a moment for the listeners out there. I think probably a lot of people won't know what that is. I happen to, because I have one, and I've experimented, and I plan on doing more with trying to record wildlife in my local area. But yeah, so I was wondering if you could tell the listeners, what is a trail camera?
Sure. It's basically a sensor camera that you can leave outside, so it's waterproof, it's tough, and yeah, mostly used by hunters for scouting. But of course, I don't do any hunting. I use it for observing wildlife. But yeah, it's basically just a sensor camera you stick on a tree. Something moves into the trigger zone, it starts recording or it takes a picture. Yeah, that's basically what it is. But yeah, mostly used by hunters. So they're set up to be tough, and you can leave them for months and months in the forest, and yeah, they'll keep going. So long battery life. But yeah, they're being used more and more for conservation or just observing wildlife too.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I know, like, no, I'm. This is gonna be a stretch for me here, but like, as far as hunters go, would hunters use them in order to try to kind of scout out potential areas that might be kind of fruitful for hunting, like areas that might have a lot of wildlife? Is that why they would use them?
Yeah, so they put them in the forest where they're planning to hunt and see the deer growing, basically.
Okay.
There's forums and like Reddit where people show their pictures of the bucks that they want to get the next hunting season.
Oh, okay.
So they're actually following the growth of the deer even before hunting season.
Oh, that's interesting. And I know through a conservation lens, I think, to be honest, before I got my first trail cam, I only have one. But it was a birthday gift to me from my brother in Canada. But I remember when he asked me, he's like, "What do you want for your birthday, Kevin?" I said a trail camera, and I'd heard about them from my first or second, I think my first year in China, where I'm based now. I was actually in Beijing, and I was following a group called the Snow Leopard Trust, who were doing a lot of conservation work, really important conservation work in the really hard mountains of Inner Mongolia. And these are incredibly hard places to access, even pre-COVID, just because of the terrain. And I know that they had a program where basically they were raising money and funds and donations to hire locals and to buy trail cameras, and they would have the locals go up into the mountains, and they gave them training to set up the trail cams to record snow leopards, which are a very elusive animal.
Great.
And they had a website, which I'll share with you later on, where they would have these incredible photos of the snow leopards and other really neat animals, like coming up and checking out the cameras and walking by and all these things.
Yeah.
So they were trying to get as many cameras in the hands of these local conservation workers in order to record data and learn about the different snow leopards. But yeah. So I follow you on all of your different social media places, but I'm sure I'm sure most of the listeners, you're going to be new to them. So what are some of the different things that you've captured over time on your trail cameras?
Well, there's a bunch of animals that are so common that we expect to see every time we pick up a camera, and that would be wild boar, probably the most captured animal from our cameras. Wild boar, deer, raccoons, tanuki, which are raccoon dog, different to raccoons. A whole bunch of animals, birds, even lizards from time to time. It picks up everything that moves basically in front of the camera. But more and more, we're thinking more about the placement of our cameras to capture not just an animal going past the camera, where we call it walk by, but finding places where animals stop to do something, to observe behavior more. So we're more interested in the behavior, I think, as well. So
I get. I was just going to say, I suppose as you're doing this, maybe in the very beginning, it was really cool just to capture an animal, to see one, right? And then now with the more experience you've gained, it's more interesting to kind of have a bit of a deeper dive, right?
Right. Yeah. So at first, just a big wild boar walking past the camera, I'd be so excited. Wow, look at that. Even now, like, I'm excited to see something like that. But setting up at, for example, a wallow where we can see the animals drink, or the wild boar and deer get in the mud, that kind of thing. Seeing that kind of behavior, it's really it's what excites us at the moment.
Yeah, so I think one thing I've learned from your channel, there was a video, and I learned some tips about placement of cameras, and I think, I'm not sure if it was you or Dan.
I think Dan put together that.
I think Dan put that video where it was like the top places or tips for setting up your trail camera, and I definitely got some great tips. And one of them was what you mentioned just now. You said like finding a wallow. Or finding a good location, and he had mentioned that like finding a water source. It's important to put that near a water source because you're going to get a lot more traffic. Now I'm just kind of to backtrack for a moment with regard to trail cameras, and again for the people out there who don't know, a trail camera is not. Some people might be familiar with something in America or Canada, like the Ring doorbell system, where you have this like a camera doorbell and people ring it, and it can stream. It can stream to your phone. I've got a contraption I'm going to be setting up at school where it's like a Wi-Fi bird box. So there's going to be a Wi-Fi camera inside a bird box. So when there's movement, anytime I could watch it on an app on my phone. Do the trail cameras work that way? Like, can you be sitting at home with your phone watching what's going on in the forest?
No, not exactly. You can get cellular cameras. But what they'll do is once they've recorded a video or taken a picture, they'll send it to your phone.
Okay.
Like after the fact.
Okay.
But I don't have any of those. But they're popular for hunters, again, up in the States or whatever. But some cameras will advertise that they have Wi-Fi. But what that means is basically that you can transfer the files from your camera to your phone using that Wi-Fi or Bluetooth.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So not like your Ring doorbell kind of setup.
Okay.
So basically, we set up a camera and we might leave it for 3 or 4 weeks, and we don't know if it's recording anything. Maybe we've chosen a bad spot or something. So it's a bit of like anticipation. Like when we go out to check it, it's really exciting for us. How many clips is going to be on it? What's going to be on the camera? Yeah, I love that.
Nice. So there's an SD card in there, and you don't know what's on that SD card until you pop that in your laptop, right?
Right, exactly. So in the field, I can open up the camera, and they have a little a tiny screen where you can review the footage on on the camera. But sometimes, yeah, you just kind of have a quick look to see if it's capturing anything good, and then just take out the card and bring it home, or swap the card if it's good, or if it looks like it's not getting good footage, move the camera somewhere else. Put in a new SD card.
Nice. I've got one camera and it doesn't have that neat little screen to look through. And I've had that disappointment where I've brought it home and I pop that SD card into my MacBook, and then the only two photos on it are one of me turning it on and one of me retrieving it. The only videos. I'm like, really? It's been here for 2 weeks and like that's it?
I guess that does happen. I've had bad spots like that too.
Yeah. Or where it's just like an off-leash dog, and I'm like, wait a second, dogs aren't allowed on this mountain. Like someone's breaking a rule. They're not allowed to let their dog walk here. Yeah, so I'm wondering, as you started this project and you've been doing it for a few years, what are some of the different things you've been learning about local wildlife that you didn't know before? And I'm curious if that's kind of like piqued an interest for you to kind of research more or get more involved in learning about local wildlife.
Sure. Well, yeah, I've learned a lot. When I started, I really had no idea about the diversity that's just in my own backyard. So learning about what different types and all the different animals in the forest, but just looking at the animals, it makes me want to research more about them and learn more about them. So I've been constantly reading up on books. I've got a pile of books right next to me now where they're just so good. And I mostly read it in Japanese because there's not a lot in English.
Yeah.
Which it takes me twice the time. But
yeah.
I've been kind of studying up on this test too, which is 生物分類技能 test, which is basically a biological classification test that the Japan Wildlife Research Center does.
Oh wow!
So I'm hoping to take that one day as well.
Wow, taxonomy stuff. That's a lot of memorization there. Even like when I would say in English, but it's all Latin stuff. I've taken some entomology courses. I'm a big bug nerd, so the taxonomy part, it's like there's so much to memorize and remember. And then we're frozen again. Oh my goodness. Okay, I wonder. Hi. Let's see if this does it here. Will that help? Hello. I think this. Yeah, we're back, and I think this will help. And it just says it's saying on my end that my internet connection's unstable. So I'm getting a little flash saying your internet connection's unstable. But okay, so again, just more editing on my part. That's cool. That's fine. Whatever. It is what it is. It is what it is. I'll make it sound great. Yeah. But yeah. So like that kind of taxonomy stuff. That's really that's hard stuff to learn in your own language, let alone in Japanese. I can't imagine. But good on you for that. That's really impressive. That is an interesting thing too. I just wanted to ask you a quick question.
Yep.
Not where in Japan are you? Like Japan obviously has some different regions. We didn't cover that part. There's obviously you've got your Hokkaido, your Honshu, the different islands. What part of the country are you in?
So I'm in Kyushu, northern Kyushu, up in Fukuoka Prefecture.
Okay, so that's like the kind of most southern large island in the archipelago.
Yeah. So it'd be West Japan, the big island down south. Yep.
I wonder, are there some animals in your neck of the woods that don't exist in other parts of Japan and vice versa?
Absolutely. So one of the biggest one is bears. There are no bears in Kyushu.
Oh, really? No bears at all?
There were, but unfortunately not anymore.
Okay.
So that's a bit of a bummer for my trail cams, I guess, because I'd love to have bears on the channel, And because of that, I lend out cameras to other people around Japan.
Oh, okay.
Because there are a few animals that we can't get here. I have friends and people helping me out. I've got a camera up in Hokkaido now.
Okay, great.
One in Yamagata, one in Nagano.
Nice.
Yeah. So they're helping out the
That's
channel.
That's some bear country there, Nagano and Hokkaido for sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh wow! If I was still I used to live in Hyogo, so if I was there, I would help you out.
That would be great.
Yeah, but in the future, I don't know when that'll happen, but that we plan on kind of buying a house, hopefully in the next few years in Japan, my wife and I, and that will be the base of operations, and it would probably be in that Kansai Hyogo region, but a bit more kind of rural, and we'll see. But I suppose in a way too, it's kind of a blessing that you don't encounter a bear. We want to capture them on cameras, but we don't always want to see them in real life, right?
Yeah. I put other people in danger, not me.
That's a smart thinker right there. That's thinking. So I'm curious too, other things that you've learned about now. One of the topics that comes up often, that will in the future, I know in this podcast, and that comes up a lot when we talk about the issues that we face when it comes to conservation, is that of, threats to wildlife. And I just remember you mentioned earlier, and I've seen it in your videos. I've seen raccoons on your cameras. I'm not talking about tanuki, but I'm like am I right? Araiguma? Is that right?
Araiguma, yes.
Araiguma. The raccoons. So I'm pretty sure they're invasive, aren't they?
They are invasive. They came over from the US. And they are pretty much everywhere. And a big problem.
So that kind of leads me into thinking, what are some of the threats that you've been learning about as far as, this is a big question. Obviously you could you can write multiple PhD dissertations on this, but what are some of the obvious threats that you've been learning about with wildlife since you've been doing this?
Right. Definitely invasive species, and also deforestation, land clearing, that kind of thing. What else? I guess those are the main things. Habitat loss.
Yeah. Well, with these, for example, like these raccoons, what are some of the stresses or the negative aspects of having them in the local environment now?
Well, they live close to among tanuki populations, raccoon dog, which are endemic in Japan, native species. So they compete for resources with them.
Yeah.
Also, they eat a lot of like native crabs and salamanders and lots of the native wildlife they're eating.
And you hear often about, like on the news, at least in the news I'm listening to, about the salamanders, especially in Japan, giant salamanders and different types of aquatic creatures. And those are often the ones that are the most vulnerable, right? Because they're so sensitive.
Right, exactly.
And the last thing we need is an invasive species munching down on them. There's all kinds of terms in Canada where they refer to them as garbage bandits or trash pandas. All these different terms. And ironically enough, when I think about the trail camera that I was given by my brother, he lives in Eastern Ontario, Canada. And once he gave it to me, I set it up in his backyard. And he lives in a pretty small city of about 50,000 people. But I remember catching skunks and raccoons and all kinds of stuff in his backyard, but a lot of raccoons. And my brother hates them. He just thinks they're awful because they like destroy his garden, and they'll chase cats and hurt like people's pets and things like that.
Yeah. Well, I can't hate them. I know they're an invasive species and they're bad for the environment here, but it's not their fault that they're here.
Yes, it's our fault, right?
Right, exactly.
People are always the cause of invasive species, right? They didn't buy a yacht and come across the Pacific on their own, did they?
Right, exactly. Yeah, and particularly with raccoons, they came over as pets after a popular Japanese animation about a raccoon. And it's funny, in the animation, the raccoon causes problems and it gets released. And that's exactly what happened when people brought them in as pets. They're really cute when they're small, but when they grow up, start tearing the house apart.
Yeah.
And they get let out into the forest. And that's where we are now.
I'm just shaking my head, folks. If you could only see, I'm just shaking my head because that's often the tale with people who, the red-eared slider, which is an invasive turtle that's all over Japan. It's all over China too. I mean, that's from the southern United States, and it's so many parents buy those as pets for their kids, and within a week to a month to a year, find themselves in local ponds and river systems. But as far as an educational tool goes, would you say like all the footage that you've been compiling, that you are, it sounds like you're refining your practices. How do you think all of this footage, or in moving forward in the future, could be used as an educational tool?
Sure. Well, when I started, it was basically just for my own kind of hobby kind of thing. But of course, more and more, I'm thinking, it could be a good educational tool. Last year, I made a kind of compilation of different animals in my area in Fukuoka and where they are, some maps. And I gave it to my son's elementary school. And they've been showing that video in classes at his school. So I guess that kind of thing, raising some awareness of what animals are around you. Yeah. More like research wise, I'm not sure what I could offer at the moment. But if someone could find it useful in some way, like I'd be happy to.
I'm sure if in the future you're able to make like connections with like biologists or people from local universities, I'm sure that maybe in the future some kind of partnership could be made.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah.
But I guarantee that I know your son's school must love that, but I'm sure 2 other schools would like that as well. Now, I mean, I know that Japanese schools maybe aren't as connected with each other maybe on like places like social media as like maybe international schools where I work. But I'm sure even places like Fukuoka International School, I know there's a school there, and maybe some of those teachers.
I'd love to get it out. I should be more proactive in contacting schools, I guess.
Because this is like, I can think of like, because I can remember even like, for example, when I was teaching in Beijing, and I taught in Kobe, Japan, we would bring in people from the community who were experts on things and knew a lot of stuff and have them do presentations for kids. I would bring people in to do presentations about birds and local birds in the community and bird watching and gardening and farming. We would bring all these people in. So maybe that's something in the future. Maybe I can through my network, maybe I can connect you with some people because that
would be great. Yeah.
I've got the long tendrils of Twitter out there connecting with teachers around the world. And for those of you listening out there too. So, why? Okay. So, I'm throwing out all kinds of big questions, but why would you say it's important for people to learn about the wildlife, to learn about these things in their local community, like no matter where it is they live?
Yeah, well, I think, firstly, a lot of the people I've talked with around me in my neighborhood, people that come through my work, they don't really know what's in the forest. They don't really know what's in the mountain behind their house. Or I live in a pretty country area, but even still, like I show some people, a video of a tanuki, and they're like, "Oh, that's in that mountain." So I think awareness is important, and if people know what is close to them, what animals are close to them, they're more likely to care about the animal, which is of course important for conservation, making decisions in even government or whatever, to have this caring for the animals that are around us. And I guess it starts with kids too. Like you ask a kid, what's your favorite animal? They might say elephant or lion, tiger, which is fine. But maybe if they learned more about the animals that are in their backyard and they cared more about those animals, those kids are going to grow up to be future leaders and conservationists, right?
Yep.
So
That's exactly
yeah,
what I
it's so
feel.
important to know what's around them.
Yeah, no, that's exactly how I feel. That's it. You're preaching to the choir here. Because so many people have a disconnect, right? And if you have that disconnect, if you don't know anything about the nature around you and you don't know about the animals, like who cares if something bad happens to it? Or, that's kind of it's always someone else's problem. We don't, but I mean, that simple act of, or the simple idea of understanding what's around you, and to know that like tanuki are really interesting animals. They're really curious, and they're cute. There's a cute factor too. And we know that the cute factor can go a really long way with helping conservation efforts, right?
You can, and you can start with that, right? These animals are really cute. Check it out, and then from there, they can look at maybe the not so cute animals too.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly, because they're equally as important. The not so cute ones.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
One animal that I see a lot in your videos that I never knew much about, but I just think they're adorable, are the badgers.
Yeah, great.
Their badges are so cool. There's some really cool videos on your all over your Twitter, your Insta, and all that stuff of badgers.
Yeah. They look really similar to European badgers, I guess, except for the coloring. But Japanese badgers, they're great. I have a badger set that I often go to, which is not far from me, and I've had some great videos setting up near their badgers. Taking out their bedding and drying it out, getting in fresh bedding, that kind of thing. Some fights.
Yeah, I've seen a few of those. Like one trying to invade another's little burrow or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
I saw one recently of one badger came on the screen just alone, and then all of a sudden, I don't know if he was like itchy or what the deal was, but he kind of curled up all of a sudden, like kind of spazzed out and flipped around a bit and kind of got up and just like walked away. It was like, what was that? What happened?
Yeah, they're really funny. They're great to watch. Their little waddle walk, and sometimes they do somersaults or something like that.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I'm you've mentioned, I don't want to keep you much longer here, but you mentioned that you're refining a lot of the places where you're putting the cameras. Yeah. So, what kind of things in the future? I assume. I mean, you've already mentioned that you're sending some cameras off into other parts of Japan to capture some different types of wildlife. What are, I guess, I don't know, Japantrailcam bucket lists? What are some things that in the future you'd hope to capture and be able to share with us?
Oh, yeah. Well, at the moment, we don't have any Sero on the channel. Sero in Japanese.
Oh, yeah. What is a Sero? Okay, I know what that is, but for the listeners, what is a Sero?
A Sero is it's kind of looks like a small deer, but it's not a deer. It's more closely related to goat in the goat family. But I guess it's a kind of antelope. I don't want to.
Yeah, they're really hard to explain, right? I'll need to find some photos and share. The guys, go. I always promote the new Facebook page. Go to the new Facebook page and on my Twitter and go to, and I'll share some pictures of what a Sero is, because it is. Yeah, it's hard to. It's kind of like a deer. It's kind of like a goat. Kind of like an antelope.
Right.
They're small, but they're cool looking.
They are cool, and they aren't in They are a few in Kyushu, but really small population. So I have better chance sending out cams to get them. But people often see them hiking, and they're kind of really mysterious. They won't run away so quickly. You see a deer in the forest, and bam, it takes off, right?
Yeah.
But Seros, they kind of hang around and see what's going on. So people have some really great kind of meetings with them hiking.
Neat.
Right. So definitely a Sero on the channel would be great. Anything else? Brown bears.
Wow. Yeah.
In Hokkaido, we'd love to get them on the channel. And just anything new we're really excited about. Mm-hmm. Even if it's a different species of bird that we haven't had before, I get excited about that.
Yeah.
I have so many great bird videos, but generally we don't put them on YouTube or Twitter or anything like that, because a trail camera can only give you not great video quality. So for me, it's exciting to see the birds, but for like social media or whatever, I just keep it for myself. But,
Okay.
but yeah,
Interesting.
the bigger animals like bears or something like that would be really exciting to have on the channel.
Mm.
Yeah.
And there's quite a big bear population in northern Japan, not just Hokkaido, but a lot of black bears and stuff like that, right?
Yeah,
The
a
Asiatic
lot.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Well, where can those out there listening today, where can they find Japantrailcam on social media? If you could just shout out where you are, all the places.
Basically everywhere.
Yeah.
But mainly we're on YouTube and Twitter. I think that's what we use mostly. So if you search YouTube for Japantrailcam, we should come up. And on Twitter at Japantrailcam, I tweet clips daily or almost daily. I tweet a lot. And but other than that, on Instagram, we post a little. And we have a Facebook page that I probably should update a bit more often.
Nice.
Main things are YouTube and Twitter.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Different demographics are in different places, right? So like for me, building a Facebook page is a big thing because I'm kind of really focused on educators, and a lot of educators are on Facebook. So I think
YouTube is a great place for us to just kind of dump long videos.
Yeah.
Like if you want to chill out, watch a video. But we use Twitter as kind of a separate thing. Twitter is more like here's some like information about some animals,
engagement, right?
Short clips. Yeah.
Twitter is another fantastic place for all you teachers listening, because teachers are really big into Twitter. That's one of those spaces where educators really spend a lot of time on Twitter, and there's just massive communities of teachers. So go over on Twitter and follow at Japantrailcam. Instagram. I'll put all these links in the show notes. Wombat, it's been great talking to you today. I really appreciate it, and definitely learned a lot. And
thank you.
Yeah. So awesome. So there you go, guys, listening. Trail cams, if you never knew what they were, now you do, and you now understand that they have an important place in conservation, and there's a lot we can learn about the natural world from them. And maybe if you live outside, if you live near the woods, go get yourself a trail cam.
Great. Thank you so much, Kevin.
All right. Again, I want to thank Wombat for taking the time to stop by the Nature Talks podcast. And you know what? It was a great conversation. I learned a lot. I'm inspired. I'm looking forward to, in the future, when I'm living somewhere a little less urban, to be able to get more trail cameras and get outside and document more of what's around me in the wildlife circles around me. So again, a fantastic episode. I'm sure there's a lot of takeaways. I really think a trail camera would be a fun educational tool to have on a school campus. Wouldn't that be neat if you had a little bit of a park behind your campus or around it, or a little bit of forested area around where your school is, or even just some big garden spaces to be able to set that camera up at night and see if you get any visitors to your school. I bet that would really excite the kids at your school and really excite the different students to see if you had any raccoons or skunks or different things like that prowling about the campus in the evening. That would be a very cool little educational tool to have in your back pocket. So again, you can find Japantrailcam all over Twitter. That's a really active place for Japantrailcam. So twitter.com/Japantrailcam, over on YouTube at Japantrailcam, and on Instagram at Japantrailcam. All those links will be in the show notes. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, there'll be a lot more information over on the Nature Talks podcast Facebook page. So go over there, like it, follow it, share it with people you know. And speaking of sharing, it's time to talk about that stuff. So, of course, you can find me on Twitter at MadForMaple, where I share this podcast a lot. And I would really appreciate it if you share this podcast. Help us grow. We're getting bigger each and every day, little by little. And you can help push us further and further. Wherever you listen to us, please leave a rating and a review. For example, if you're over on Apple Podcast, you can give us a rating or a review there. Or on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, wherever it may be. Also, if you're an educator listening to this, you're probably on Facebook, you're probably on Twitter. Please share the links and the information about these episodes and the different education groups, the environmental education, the climate action, the sustainability Facebook groups you may be involved in. Please share these episodes. It'll definitely help us grow faster. Spread the word amongst the people that you work with about this podcast. Get them inspired. We have a lot more incredible guests coming in the next few weeks. I'm really excited. Some really amazing people doing amazing things, just like the guests we've had on so far. So again, I want to thank each and every one of you for supporting the Nature Talks podcast. My name is Kevin O'Shea. I'm a Canadian. I'm an educator. I live and work in Shenzhen, China, and I am hoping that you are happy wherever you are. I hope you have a chance to get outside into nature today, and if you are an educator, to get your kids out into nature and to do something about making our world a better place, because right now we need all boots on the ground. We need all hands on deck. What are some other sayings I can use? Yeah, we need a lot of help, guys, to make this world a better place. And you guys, by listening to this podcast, might be getting some ideas of how you can do that. All right, well, that's it for this episode number 15 of the Nature Talks podcast. I'll be talking to you again in a week. See you then.